So now we're going to get to the fun part of JavaScript, which are the conditional statements, the if, else, and we had briefly looked at these earlier. And what conditional statements do is they give you the ability to really add some logic and logical function to your JavaScript, and then hence to your HTML code. And all an if-else statement does is it actually reads a lot like the English language, where you have if, and the if is just asking the question. So if, and let's just set some values here. So variable 1 equals 1, variable 2, because it's going to be a little bit easier to illustrate this initially with integers. So if we have a value of 1, and actually we're going to invoke something here with the function as well. So we're going to use the function actually as a way to output content. I'm just going to call this my output and do it like that. HTML output. So that should maybe be a capital. So HTML output is my brand new function, and whenever I call HTML output, what's going to happen there? So we're going to comment this out for now. And the way that you do a whole comment section, so we had looked at this commenting before, where we do these two slashes, and that comments out anything written after that. If you want to comment out a whole area, you do a slash asterisk. So I just want to make sure whenever I create new functions, I always like to just test them out and just to make sure that they actually work. This is working. And we'll just see what happens here when the code runs, and it does look like it's working. So that's good news, excellent news, that this function now, whatever I'm passing into this function, is actually outputting on the screen. So again, really great way to work with functions, and they really add quite a bit. So the reason I wanted to check if that was working is that now what I can do is I can just output it on the screen. So instead of using the console, I can do something, this type of condition. So if I have if 1, and because 1 actually exists, it's going to return it as true. So anything coming over here means that whatever is put in this condition is true, and else is this is not working. And so whatever else, so if this condition, whatever we're putting within these brackets, if the value is actually false, then it's going to return that. So I think if we do something like this, it's probably going to come back that we don't have that variable and value, which is true. So if we have something like this that's false, it's not going to return anything because our JavaScript is breaking. But if we do if 1 is equal to 1, actually maybe I can just do it like this, which makes a little bit more sense. So this is true. And actually another thing to note when you are doing these conditions, sometimes you might see these 3 equal signs, and this is an absolute value. So this means that the data type is the same. So the first 2 mean that, okay, is it equal to 1, 1? So even if you were to do something like this, turn this integer into a string, you'll see that it still comes up true. But if we add that additional equal sign, we're going to see that the data type is no longer an integer, a numeric value, and it's actually a string value. And that's why 1 is no longer equal to 1, because this one is not equal to a numeric 1. And it's the same thing as saying that, but if we actually quote this out and turn it into a string, and we can see here that again, using those variables really does help us out a lot, and it does allow us to make all of the controls up here instead of having to go down here within the code and update them. So it is definitely a better way, but I'm just showing you this to illustrate the point that so string 1 is actually equal to a numeric 1, because we're not looking at the data type. But if we add another equal sign, then we actually are looking at the data type. And alternatively, we can also do things like this. So this one is not equal to this one. And so when we do run this, we see that this in fact is not equal because the type is not equal. But if we were to remove this, then let's see what happens. We're asking if 1 is not equal to 1, then this is gonna be true. But because 1 is equal to 1, this statement is false, and it's coming up not true. So there's a little bit of playing around there that you're going to have to do just in order to get used to these kind of true, not true. And just remember that when you ask this question, if it comes back true, this is going to be the response, and everything else is going to be else. So again, kind of reads logically in the English language. So we also do have a few other options here. So 1, again, it's equal to 1. So when we switch this over to an integer value, and we also do have these actual comparisons where we can do if 1 is greater than 1, it's going to be equal to true. So if 1 is greater than 0, it actually is true. So sorry, that one was not true. So again, a little bit confusing there. Because if we do have a 1, we have to do greater than or equal to 1, and then this should come up true once it refreshes. Because this 1, again, remember that we had set a value of 1, and it is greater than or equal to, and similarly you can do 1 less than, and just a lot of different types of comparisons. You can also get into further logical comparisons, so we're going to be getting into that in the next lesson.